Welcome back. My next guest says religion has been given a free ride for way too long. He describes it as lethally dangerous nonsense. In fact, he says if you believe in God, you're deluded. Will you welcome, please, Richard Dawkins? I just ask our audience a question, first of all, if you'd raise your hands. How many of you believe in God? Okay, a forest of hands. So, Richard Dawkins, these people are deluded. Every single one of them.
Well, I fear that's right, yes.
You guys believe 20 billion years ago there was a Big Bang where nothing exploded and produced everything. 4.6 billion years ago the Earth cooled down, made a hard rocky crust. It rained on the rocks for millions of years, turned them into soup, and the soup came alive 3 billion years ago. Found somebody to marry, and something to eat, of course, and slowly evolved into everything we see today. There are some lies in our science books. Taught it for 15 years. Even though I'm not teaching it anymore, I still like to study. It's so many neat things to learn. We're going to cover some of that tonight. I'm not against science. I'm not against schools. I'm not against teachers. Because most of them don't know what they believe. You have to tell them. They teach the kids it all started with a Big Bang 20 billion years ago. What exploded?
Before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Literally nothing. An infinitesimal nugget of space. And then something happened, triggering the most colossal explosion in history.
What? Yes, boys and girls, you see, nothing exploded, and here we are. They call that science and put it in a science book. I would call that stupid and put it in the garbage.
The origin of the something, the origin of the cosmos, was, I suspect, an extremely simple event. And simple events are very simple to understand and explain.
Before the Big Bang, there was nothing. Literally nothing. Nothing created everything. Some 13.7 billion years ago, we think it was tiny. Nothing. Literally nothing was tiny. And then something happened. Nothing created everything. All the matter we see in the universe today.
Of course it's counterintuitive that you can get something from nothing. Of course common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. That's why it's interesting.
So I asked this professor if I could ask him some questions about the Big Bang. He said, sure, what would you like to know? I said, where did all this matter come from? He said, well, we don't know that for sure. I said, well, sir, would you please tell me where the laws came from? The universe is run by laws, gravity, centrifugal force, inertia. Who gave the laws? He said, we don't know that either. I said, sir, could you tell me where the energy came from? You know, it takes energy to make a Big Bang. Who bought the gas to run this machine anyway? He said, we don't know that either. I said, sir, could I ask you another question? He said, sure. What else would you like to know? What else? What do you mean else? You haven't told me nothing yet.
Literally nothing.
I said, does Berkeley have a merry-go-round? You see, if a spinning object breaks apart in a frictionless environment, the fragments will all spin the same direction. The professor said, yes, I understand about the conservation of angular momentum. I said, well, good. I'd like to ask you a question then, sir. If the whole universe began as a swirling dot, like you said, why do two planets spin backwards? He said, that's interesting. I said, no, that's more than interesting. It's kind of hard on your Big Bang theory. Not only that, 6 of the moons are spinning backwards. Why? He said, I don't know. Why do you think they're going backwards? I was hoping he was going to ask that. I said, well, sir, I believe it's very simple. You see, I believe in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and God did it that way on purpose, just to make the Big Bang theory look stupid.
The Big Bang is a very, very simple event. Physicists don't quite understand it yet. The Big Bang is a very, very simple event, and simple events are very simple to understand and explain. Physicists don't quite understand it yet.
Don't tell me my theory is religious and yours is science. Oh, no, sir, they're both religious. Evolution is a religion. You have to believe.
Once upon a time, not that long ago, a couple of centuries ago, the question would not have been, why is there something rather than nothing? The question would have been, why is there all this magnificent life? Why are there trees? Why is there grass? Why are there birds? Why are there humans? Darwin answered that question and blew out of the water the theistic answer to that question.
Then they're going to tell the kids, well, we have evidence for this theory. Charlie Darwin stopped off at these islands right there called the Galapagos Islands. There on those islands, Charlie noticed there were 14 different varieties of finches. Charlie studied the birds very carefully and said, you know what? I think all these birds had a common ancestor. I bet you're right, Charlie. It was a bird. You see 14 kinds of birds, and you conclude that birds and bananas are related. Darwin said, though, if my theory be true, numberless intermediate varieties must assuredly have existed. Even Stephen Gould admitted the absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages is a persistent and nagging problem for evolution.
People often say, where are the intermediate fossils? Show us your intermediate fossils. Pachycetus about 48.5 million years.
Pachycetus was made from one small piece of jaw, a small piece of skull, and a few teeth. You find a little bit of jaw, a little bit of skull, a couple of teeth, and you know that it's half whale, half something on land?
After 4 more partial skulls and 150 additional Pachycetus bones had been discovered, all of which clearly proved that this creature was 100% land animal.
Rhodocetus about 47.5 million years.
Many textbooks and museums show Rhodocetus with flippers for feet, a long tail, and a fluke like whales have. Even though they only found a few vertebrae that followed the pelvis,
Dr. Phil Gingrich, the scientist responsible for the discovery and reconstruction of Rhodocetus, was questioned how he knew there was a whale fluke on Rhodocetus, since that part of the fossil was missing.
Well, I told you we don't have the tail in Rhodocetus, so we don't know for sure whether it had a ball vertebra indicating a fluke or not. So I speculated it might have had a fluke.
David Robb, who believes in evolution very strongly, says in the years after Darwin, his advocates hoped to find predictable progressions. In general, these have not been found, yet the optimism has died hard, and some pure fantasy has crept into textbooks. Oh, you're kidding. Fantasy in our textbooks? Oh, yep.
Now, since then, we've found the forelimbs, the hands, and the front arm, the arms, in other words, of Rhodocetus. And we understand that it doesn't have the kind of arms that can be spread out like flippers are on a whale. And if you don't have flippers, I don't think you can have a fluke tail and really powered swimming. And so I now doubt that Rhodocetus would have had a fluke tail.
Dorodon about 36 million years ago.
finally, we have Dorodon. These animals are simply extinct whales. They had nostril openings, blowholes on top of their skulls, measured about 50 feet long, and lived in the water full time.
People often say, where are the intermediate fossils? Show us your intermediate fossils. There are plenty of intermediate fossils, and one of the best
Are you sure about that?
examples is whales. Dorodon about 36 million years ago, Rhodocetus about 47.5 million years, Pachycetus about 48.5 million years.
Listen to how 2 renowned evolutionary biologists summarize the truth. Instead of finding the slow, smooth, and progressive changes, they saw in the fossil record rapid bursts of change, new species appearing seemingly out of nowhere and then remaining unchanged for millions of years, patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation. Question 3. What do the graphics on evolutionary charts indicate? I mean, they sure do look convincing. For instance, on this one from the dinosaur book, you got solid red columns and white columns showing gradual progression over time. But let's read the almost imperceptible 2-point font over here. It reads, tinted areas indicate solid fossil evidence, which means the white areas represent no solid fossil evidence, right? Okay, then take them away. Uh-oh, looks like patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation, I'd say, right from their own charts. And the same thing goes for the dotted lines on this one. Look at all of them. Just so we're clear, dotted lines indicate zero evidence. Remove them and what do you get? No transitional forms or evidence of gradual progression.
Modern whales have completely lost the hind legs. There are some vestigial bones, some remnant bones buried deep inside the body.
This textbook says the whale has a vestigial pelvis. Here's the bones they're talking about right there. Just imagine the whale walking around.
Vestigial bones.
This is a lie. Those little bones are anchor points that special muscles attach to that allow the whales to reproduce. So either these guys are ignorant about their whale anatomy or they're lying to your kids trying to spread their theory.
There are plenty of intermediate fossils.
Nebraska man was used for years as evidence for evolution. All they found for Nebraska man was one tooth. That is the entire Nebraska man right there. Then they built an entire man from that one tooth and later made him a wife. Now you have to really be good to know what his wife looks like from his tooth. Later they found out the tooth actually came from a pig. There's the real Nebraska man. How about Piltdown man? Somebody took a human skull and an ape's jaw, they filed them down and Fooled everybody. For 40 years, it was in the textbooks as proof for evolution. It was a fraud, exposed as a fraud. 1953. Neanderthal man is still in your textbooks, used in your town here in Knoxville, Tennessee. But it's been proven years ago it cannot possibly be a missing link. Well, they've known from the very beginning it was an old man with arthritis who's slowly going down. He's not coming up at all. What they've got in there now is called Australopithecus afarensis. That was proven wrong in 1973. They've got Australopithecus africanus, or afarensis, better known as Lucy. How many have ever heard of Lucy before? Now, the bones of the skull were crushed thoroughly, could not tell anything about the skull, but when they put it together for your kid's textbook, they can make it half human, half ape. The knee joint that was labeled Lucy's knee was actually found 1.5 miles away and 200 feet deeper. But National Geographic labeled it Lucy's knee. It's not Lucy's knee. It's 1.5 miles away, for heaven's sake, okay? Lucy's knee angled off to the side, the femur angled. And Donald said, see, that proves she's becoming a human. No, any monkey that climbs trees has an angled femur. What he found was a tree-climbing monkey. It's not proof it's becoming a human. He said, well, the bones are slightly bigger than a regular ape. Well, that's true. It doesn't prove it's becoming a human. The bones of a Clydesdale are slightly bigger than a regular horse. It doesn't prove it's becoming a truck, for heaven's sake. Okay? Homo erectus is still in the textbooks. Homo erectus used to be called Java man. Then they changed it to Pithecanthropus erectus and now called Homo erectus. What they found was an ape's skull cap, 3 human teeth, and a thigh bone found a year later 50 feet away. Du Bois put them all together and said, we have a missing link here. You don't even know those animal bones go together. 3 teeth, thigh bone, and a skull cap from an ape. The famous anatomist Virchow said, in my opinion, this creature is an animal, a giant gibbon. In fact, the thigh bone has not the slightest connection with the skull. Du Bois hid the fact that he found 2 human skulls in the same area. He put those under his bed, under the floor. There's no evidence of how man evolved at all. Fossil evidence for evolution for humans is fragmentary. Fossil evidence of chimpanzee evolution is absent altogether. There is no evidence of how chimpanzees evolved. Darwin said, if my theory be true, numberless intermediate varieties must assuredly have existed.
Instead of finding the slow, smooth, and progressive changes, they saw in the fossil record rapid bursts of change, new species appearing seemingly out of nowhere and then remaining unchanged for millions of years, patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation.
There are plenty of intermediate fossils, and one of the best.
If we take the lies out of the books, there's nothing left to support evolution.
36 million years ago, 47.5 million years, 48.5 million years.
Then they tell the kids about the geologic column. They say each of the layers is a different age, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archeozoic, all them Zoic boys. The geologic column is the Bible for the evolutionist. It can only be found one place in the world, the textbooks. There's no geologic column, and they know it. This fellow says, if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. The geologic column is a hoax. Does not exist. It is stupid. If the geologic column were true, if you look at the side of Grand Canyon, you see all these thousands of layers. Now, if you get a petrified tree standing up, running through different rock layers, I don't think it's smart to say those layers are vastly different ages. Those trees did not get slowly covered by the sediments over millions of years. They would rot and fall down. They tell the kids in the late 1940s they invented carbon dating. We're going to explain a little bit about radiometric dating and how it's supposed to work, and then show you that it does not work, okay? It sounds good, but there are some assumptions that mess everything up. If we had walked into a room and found a candle burning on the table, and I asked you the question, when was it lit? You say, I don't know, Mr. Hovind, it's burning when I got here. Okay, well then let's do some empirical science. Let's measure the height of the candle. Suppose the candle is 7 inches tall. Who can tell me when it was lit? Okay, nobody. Let's do some more empirical science. Let's measure the rate of burn. Suppose we determine it's burning 1 inch an hour. When was it lit? Billions of years ago. You're going to have a hard time telling me unless you're willing to make some assumptions. You find a fossil in the dirt. You can measure how much C14 is in it. Very accurately, by the way. And you can measure how fast it's decaying. That's just like measuring the height of your candle and how fast it's burning. Now, when did that animal die? You don't have a clue. Here's what you ought to consider about carbon dating. Samples of known age, it doesn't work. If it's a sample of unknown age, it is assumed to work.
Pachycetus about 48.5 million years.
Living mollusk shells were carbon dated at 2,300 years old. Freshly killed seal carbon dated 1,300 years old. Shells from living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old. That's stupid. He's still alive, okay? I know snails are slow, but 27,000 years, he'd be dead, okay? One part of a mammoth is 29,000 years old, another part's 44,000. One part of Dima was 40,000 years old, another part was 26,000, and the wood next to it is 9,000. The lower leg of a mammoth is 15,000 years old, the skin is 21,000. Two mammoths found side by side in Alaska, one is 16,000, one's 22,000. Which number is right? Living penguins, carbon dated 8,000 years old. Richard Dawkins said,
Of course it's counterintuitive that you can get something from nothing. Of course common sense doesn't allow you to get something from nothing. That's why it's interesting.
well, Richard, that's stupid. And that's where the problem comes in. The problem is, they want to use my tax dollars to teach that to your kids in our schools. Okay? If you want to believe in the Big Bang, just enjoy yourself. But keep your religion at home. Okay? Because it is a religion. The Russian atheist astronomer came to America and spoke at one of the universities, and he started off his speech. He said, folks, either there is a God or there isn't. Both possibilities are frightening. If there is no God, we're in trouble. We're hurtling through space around the sun right now at 66,000 miles an hour, and nobody's in charge. That's a scary thought. But if God made the world, He owns it. That means He makes the rules. You see, if there is a God, we better find out who He is, and find out what He wants, and do what He says. Arthur Keith said, evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it because the only alternative is special creation. And that is unthinkable. Malcolm Muggeridge said, I am convinced the theory of evolution, especially the extent to which it's been applied, will be one of the great jokes in the history books of the future. It's a joke. And it would be a joke if it weren't for the tragic results. How many kids are taught this thing every day and believe it, and it destroys their faith? Hey, if you died today, where would you go? You ought to think about it, because you will be dead for a long time. Doesn't matter how long you live, you're going to be dead longer than that. You know, George Washington died 200 years ago, and he's still dead. How much longer does he have to go? You're going to be dead for a long time. All you get in this life is a little bitty dash between two dates. Just a little, and it's gone. What are you going to do with your dash? Where would you go if you died? Now, if you're not sure you're going to heaven, you ought to give your heart to the Lord and get saved. We are guilty of breaking His rules. Commandment number 9, thou shalt not bear false witness. That means don't lie. How many of you have ever lied before? Come on, you don't do another one. Put your hand up. Number 8, don't steal. How many ever stole something? You already told me you're a liar. Now come on. You don't have to read very far to realize we're guilty, which means we're going to be punished. Or find a substitute. See, I can't substitute for your sins because I got a whole bunch of my own. But Jesus Christ is not only willing, He's able. He wants to take your place. He wants to pay for your sins. It's real simple. February 9th, 1969. My friend said, Kent, you're a sinner. He said, you deserve to go to hell. But Jesus died for you. He wants to save you. If you'll ask Him, He'll save you right now. And I bowed my head and said, Lord, I'm a sinner and I deserve to go to hell, but would you please forgive me and save me? And I've got God's promise I'm going to heaven. It's not because I'm good. If I get what I deserve, I'm in serious trouble. But I've been forgiven by the blood of Jesus Christ. You can have the same thing.
The Big Bang is an amazingly difficult thing to wrap your brain around, which isn't surprising.
Some 13.7 billion years ago, nothing created everything. All the matter we see in the universe today. Nothing is more powerful than nothing. And that's what trips most of us up.
It was the explosion of
Nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
You can dispute exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And why is that funny?
Well, I think it's a bit funny to be trying to define nothing.
Well, can I put that to you as a question? Is it equally...